One day chaos came to the world. Monsters attacked people and destroyed everything around, sowing panic and destruction. They appeared completely out of the blue and attacked everyone indiscriminately. The monsters far surpassed humans in size and strength, had sharp fangs and tough skin. The creatures could show up anywhere and wreak havoc. Ordinary humans couldn't handle them. The helicopter blades parted the air noisily near Cheongho-dong. There was a new anomaly, and at first people couldn't even figure out what it was. The cyclopean object did not attack humans, even if they were in close proximity. The rocky tower towered above the city with a lone, sharp tusk. It soon revealed itself by activating a summoning circle, absorbing people right off the streets. Once inside, at first they didn't know what was happening or why. It was as if the tower had drawn a lottery and called for random winners. For years they disappeared into the depths and were severely tested. Until 1 in 5 people on Earth has been in the tower as a hunter. The hunters who cleared the tower became the new hope of mankind. 12 years after its discovery, the monsters have gone nowhere. The streets of the city were still filled with ugly creatures, vile and bloodthirsty. But now they were easily countered, killing them with a single blow. Hunters destroyed monsters with magic and other abilities. Their appearance attracted a storm of attention and loud applause. As if they were heroes, they became the ideal for people. Even ordinary hunters were known by name. Their forces forced governments to pass new laws. However, the hunters have created their own world, with guilds and alliances outside of the state. The cameraman beeped, letting them know they were on the air. There were 3 guests sitting in the studio, 2 men and a girl between them. The beautiful host welcomed the audience and started the show. The leaders of the top 3 guilds in Korea are in the studio today. Goguryeo Guild leader Han Kwon-seo, a young man with a bold hairstyle, a model-like blue-eyed girl from the Aaron Guild, Lee So-yeon. The last to introduce himself was the unflappable, handsome man, Kim Shi-hyun, the leader of the Seoul Guild. The show was about an experienced player, a mysterious personality that has become popular online. The guild leaders were surprised to hear a familiar nickname. The skilled player has spawned many legends and urban stories about himself. Kwon-seo laughed ruefully. Judging from what they say, player is not dead and is living well. Pretty Seo-yeon revealed that experienced player and has been living in the tower for 12 years. When the tower was cleared, he did not leave like the others, but went down to the first floor again, Kim Shi-hyun added. All 3 of them thought he was the first hunter the tower had summoned. The whole time it's been in existence, it's been inhabited by a hunter who's been mopping it up time after time. One could only wonder how strong a man was that he had lived so long, 12 years. He walked the tower from the first floor to the 100th floor in one day. The player is stronger than any tower apprentice in all basic skills, except magic. One day the hunters ran away without looking back and called for help. Dropping their weapons and wounded, the group scurried away, but one man did not run. The blast knocked back a few of the weaker hunters, but the guy in the tracksuit wasn't hurt. A large cloud of dust rose from the impact and enveloped the cave. But the guy in the barefoot flip-flops was moving forward at a leisurely pace. The hunter walked forward in deep thoughtfulness, as if he were strolling in a park. He looked up when he came across an obstacle in front of him. Just the final boss standing in his way with an ugly maw. A Baylock demon with a mane of fire loomed over a simple guy in a suit and flip-flops, and played peekaboo with him, staring at him with coal-red eyes. The guy smiled at the demon as if he were an old acquaintance. "Seeds are there, and if I find any?" he asked. There was a lot of gossip online about the experienced player. Everyone wanted to determine his rank. Witnesses told different stories of how they crossed paths with the player in their levels. Once on the 72nd floor, he had single-handedly defeated 3 huge werewolves. After meeting the player, people reported that he was inhumanly strong. They said he could jump from the 1st floor to the 10th floor. The guy in the tracksuit gave the demon the usual leg kick. The demon's head cracked against the floor of the cave, clanking its teeth. The demon roared angrily, unable to get up after receiving such a blow. Spanker pinned the head of the final tower boss to the ground. Laughing madly, the guy in the tracksuit asserted himself over the defeated enemy. He laughed like a madman, making me question who the bigger demon was. The boss of the last floor was decomposing in a magical glow like a normal dungeon monster. The crazy guy in the tracksuit sighed. It was over too quickly. Over the course of 12 years, the time to pass the training tower gradually decreased. All the towers are similar to each other, and their contents have not changed. Those who were trained became more and more numerous, and their knowledge accumulated and helped others to avoid dangers. Humans tackled monsters they couldn't otherwise defeat. Information became the main weapon of the tower dungeons. Over time, the training turned into a sporting event where groups of hunters set new records. In many countries, sharing information has become the best strategy to help the weak survive and to identify and recruit the strong. However, there was a limit to what humans could do, even with the information advantage. People were dying like flies. Few survivors were able to reach the end of the tower. Hundreds of hunters fell in spite of all the efforts and help given. Even after reaching the last floor, they continued to take casualties. The 100th floor monster, the lord of the tower, the demon blazing fire, was blocking the way. The final test of the tower, the ugly, evil demon Balok. This disaster has taken the lives of half the players, and the survivors will be plagued by nightmares. And so this fearsome monster was nullified by a single attack of striped flip-flops. The crazy guy in the tracksuit kicked the penalty with the demon's head. No black and white striped flip-flops were harmed. The surviving hunters couldn't believe their nightmare was killed in one blow. 1,349th sweep. Counted off the insanely strong guy melancholically. The light of the portal illuminated his face, indifferent to everything. Sighing, he slammed into the direction of the purple portal, the exit from the tower. He closed his eyes and listened to the sensations. The familiar feeling of slight disorientation came and went. He opened his eyes and looked around. No change, still the same damp dungeon. The neon banner of the first floor still bore the same bored greeting to those who entered. A new walkthrough had begun. There was a nervous laugh from a guy in gym shoes and flip-flops. He fell to his knees and despaired. Even a fun ride would get boring if you didn't get off it. The entire tower shook with his profanity, the unwilling prisoner begging to be brought home. Letting off a little steam, the hunter lay down on the cold stone floor of the tower and called up the status window, as he did every time after another sweep cycle. The familiar blue rectangle of the interface appeared before my eyes as a translucent cloud. 12 years ago, he and his friends had made it to Balok with great and loss among the first. Having defeated the demon, the four friends were jubilant, celebrating their victory and their imminent return home. Everyone thanked Kim Hyun-woo for saving them and agreed to meet again. But the hunter modestly shrugged off the merits and made a promise to meet them. After the portal, however, he was disappointed to see the boring signboard of a bogus establishment again. The neon sign blinded his eyes. He was the only one back at the starting room. Received the curse of the banshee, read his sentence in the blue window. As much as Hyun-woo tried to understand why he was cursed and imprisoned, he never found any answers. So he began to sweep the tower on his own from the very bottom and slowly went crazy, trying everything he could. Hyun-woo persistently passed the tower dozens of times, each time carving a mark on the stone. He quickly increased his physical strength to the limit and could smash rocks with his bare hands. But a boring neon sign haunted him at the damned tower entrance. Even after 5 years of trying everything possible, he couldn't get out. In his own way, he was even enjoying what was going on, playing tricks on the other hunters. Kim Hyun-woo gave them tasks, playing the role of the starting NPC's mentor and dungeon guide. He played the role of a tough military training instructor, making the rookies sweat in training. But it couldn't last long. Everyone he knew had left the tower after the sweep. After 1,000 passes, he stared at the status window again, dying of boredom. But this time, something was different, and Hyun-woo excitedly stood up. He read the inscription again. Curse broken, the status informed him. Hyun-woo grinned like a madman. Would he really be released after all these years? His joyous shriek shook every floor of the tower from the first to the last. The hardcore inmate mustered all his physical power in flip-flops. The guy in the sweatpants did his usual upward leap, but with so much force it smashed through a dozen floors in one fell swoop. The lone guy in flip-flops was finally heading home. The host of the show asked the guild leaders if the 18th group of hunters that entered the tower could break the mop-up record. Groups vary greatly in composition, number, and cohesion, and it's hard to predict their capabilities in advance, Beauty Lee, So Yeon replied. It's also important to understand which techniques are more effective given everyone's abilities, Kim Shi-hyun added with a nonchalant face. Kwon Seo clarified that the biggest obstacles occur after passing the middle of the tower. Starting on the 51st floor, a high-level boss, much stronger than the other mobs, appeared every 10 floors. The level 60 boss became anxious when he sensed something wrong. A strong earthquake started at his level, as if a volcanic eruption was imminent. The ground split open, revealing a mad hunter in a hurry to get home. His eyes burned with fire at how many years this tower had kept him locked up. In one jump, he went through 10 levels like a rocket. 90th floor, Hyunwoo's rocket didn't slow down, but instead continued to gain speed. Level after level turned to blazing ruins by just one player. Explosions comparable to bombs, rocks turned to dust, until the insanely strong prisoner reached the last floor, the dumb, ugly Git, staring at the hunter one last time. Down with this boring game where there are no updates and the quit button doesn't work. Baylock zeroed in on a second from a single light kick under the breath. The ascent took a record few minutes and nearly destroyed the tower. Jongho-dong, Condon District, Tower Access Control Center, observed her activity at the foot of the tower. A flash of purple color confused the office staff and they stared out the window. The gate of the tower opened, a purple portal failure appeared. A guy in a tracksuit and barefoot flip-flops walked out onto the lawn in front of the tower. Kim Hyunwoo looked at the city in front of him, laughing madly. The guy was greeted by a slightly overweight surveillance office employee and congratulated him on his passage. Good work, he praised the hunter, but he was still recovering from his long time out. Finally turning around abruptly, the odd-looking kid looked at the official. Hyunwoo asked him sharply in a trembling voice if he had definitely left the tower. The young man's face brightened with joy. He wanted to hear it from the outside, to know for sure he wasn't dreaming. "He's home!" Thunderous exclamation. Kim Hyunwoo is finally back. His name was not found on the list of the last 18th group. The watcher had to flip through the tower's impressive list of trainees. The first group, wondered the association's observer, impossibly, he thought. Experienced player, the hunter of the first group of the training tower, Kim Hyunwoo, officially made it out of the tower after 12 years. A week later, many people gathered outside the testing center. People were rushing to meet the newcomers from the 18th group, and to see the already world-famous stars who would also be here. Considering this band broke the world record for a full 2 weeks, the hype surrounding them is more than justified. But one more piece of news about couldn't go unnoticed. The same hunter is also here today. Graceful feet in fancy shoes paced the wooden parquet of the VIP box. Into the well-furnished living room walked a cute girl. She was a little late to meet her friends. The three gathered were representatives of the top hunter guilds. They had come to verify the rumors of the returned hunter. Now come together again. They will easily recognize their friend, for in the tower there is no cold and sleep, and people don't age. Their friend hasn't changed a bit since then. Han Seo-kwan was anticipating the meeting, excited about how strong his former comrade could become. Many newcomers were gathered in the hall, wearing protective gear and waiting for the test to begin. Kim Hyunwoo chewed on a packet of chips. Over the years, he'd longed for the taste of them. The appetizer quickly ran out, and he sighed disappointedly. He yawned sleepily, which surprised the entire group of newbie hunters. Hyunwoo noticed that the hunters were wearing strange equipment. The gear was distributed early in the morning, but the freed hunter skipped everything, wanting to sleep longer after 12 years without sleep. The start signal sounded. Everyone was serious, as if a difficult test was ahead. The gate opened, blinding the newcomer hunters inside with a bright light. Hyunwoo squirmed, and not knowing what to expect from the test, he was clearly bored. They came to the labyrinth, a huge building the size of a hangar standing in front of them. Newcomers were greeted by a man in a black mob boss suit. A hunter, David. He wore a black suit, black drop glasses for coolness. He was bursting with importance, as if he were a secret agent on an important mission. He began a pathos-laden opening speech, and the crowded yokels of newcomers listened attentively. The hunters were nervous, despite having just cleared the tower. Maybe David's suit had impressed them, or the knowledge that cameras were watching them. David seemed pleased with the impression he'd made on the newcomers. "But there's nothing to worry about," the examiner informed me in a patronizing tone. All but one person listened to his instructions, Kim Hyun-woo blatantly yawning. He was already drowsy after David's first words, thinking only about getting it over with. David continued to be important. He pulled out his phone, announcing the start of the first test. A terrible scraping sound was unpleasantly painful to the ears, like the creaking of stone on metal. "There are many challenges ahead of them in the maze," the examiner added over the scrambling. As if by magic, the heavy megaliths rose into the air. They moved fast with a rumbling and scraping sound as if they were in a race. The monoliths formed complex three-dimensional structures, intricately shaped. High walls grew in front of the test subjects. David continued to browbeat the young and inexperienced, warning them of the traps and dangers of the maze. Boys and girls stood at arm's length, hoping to show what they could do. Their eyes burned with determination, and now he was raring to fight as if for the first time. The adrenaline in their blood made them clutch their weapons tighter, grit their teeth. The signal to attack, and they moved forward as a group. David escorted the fleeing men with a glance. This group seemed disciplined and prepared. He smiled, remembering his youth. Should we expect good results from the newcomers this time, too? David rejoiced at the good start, but one hunter had yet to enter the maze. He called out to David from the back, tearing him from his musings. "You just have to get out of the maze," the guy in the suit said. David pulled back his drops to look at the weirdo. Who is this guy? He asked himself, that he was in no hurry at all to get anywhere. With no gear, in just a tracksuit and flip-flops, he didn't look like a normal rookie. This guy can really pass the test, wondered the examiner. The shaggy-haired weirdo stepped closer and stared at him smugly. Hyun-woo waited for an answer, neither the test itself nor his grade. He didn't care. "Is this a joke?" frowned the examiner. This rookie was allowing himself too much. In addition, the newcomer only smirked back and advised David to watch the other students. David flared up. After all, he's an A-rank hunter and some chick is treating him with no respect. Kim Hyun-woo seemed to be counting on it and offered a bet. He would complete the maze in 20 seconds, betting $1 million won to the winner. The newcomer was talking outright nonsense, which pissed him off even more. "Did he chicken out?" the odd hunter prodded David. $10 million, David gritted through his teeth. He decided to up the ante. Barely hearing the amount, an overjoyed Hyun-woo rushed towards the labyrinth. What kind of crazy person, thought David. Hyun-woo's hand touched the wall of the maze. An ordinary stone. The tower is made up of the same. In his thoughts, Hyun-woo counted the money. The fees of hunters in the service of the state were impressive, tens of millions of won, easy money in his pocket. Hyun-woo swung his fist from a low stance like karateka do. The main thing about the punch is the fulcrum. He's properly grounded. And unleashed his power, his foot went deeper into the concrete base. David took off his glasses, not realizing what the strange newcomer was up to. The audience stared at the screen, also puzzled as to what the skilled player was doing. Even his friends couldn't tell what was going on, and watched intently. Hyun-woo concentrated, and inhaled deeply and gathered strength. His hand was covered in a blinding blue glow. He unleashed all his absurd power in one blow with a bright flash. The shockwave soaked the maze through as if it were made of cardboard. Hyun-woo walked through the dense cloud of dust, following the beaten path. Standing proudly in the middle of the piles of rocks on the other side of the maze, he announced that he had passed the test. He just won a bet he offered himself, easy money. There was a commotion in the audience room. The audience was in shock. Kwanseo was satisfied. Their friend is still a stubborn guy. Hyun-woo could only think about the 10 million won he had just won. It suddenly dawned on him he wasn't in the tower anymore, where everything would fix itself. I just hoped they wouldn't make him pay for the damages. 24 hours before the test in Hunter's newsroom, work was simmering. The next issue of the magazine was special because of the contributors. Rumors of an experienced player could fuel magazine sales this month. It wasn't easy to find anything about the player, however, with editors looking for other promising rookies. One such was just on the list. The reporters knew him well as they followed the hunters. A beginner strong in traditional martial arts and characterized by good physical fitness. This newbie hunter could outshine even an experienced player. They should have prepared themselves. Lee Kang-hyun read the caption under the photo of the tough guy. The hunter gripped his sword tightly and prepared for battle. He always dreamed of becoming a star, of finding fame and recognition. And he has always had the skills, intelligence, and luck to accomplish that goal. Where others fled, he stayed to meet the enemy, holding his katana firmly in front of him. And so he always went into battle without fear and without a shadow of a doubt. No matter what creepy monsters came his way, he never backed down. Not afraid of death, he looked it in the eye and chopped with all his might. That's how Lee Kang-hyun became the best hunter of the 18th group. A good debut is a step to his success. He could count on it. That's what he thought until he saw the 100th floor boss die from a single kick. With a kick of his foot, the dreaded tower demon's head was blown clean off. Someone despised Lee Kang-hyun's efforts to climb up. He remembered the face of the madman with the burning eyes that snatched victory from his hands. That bastard blew through a hurricane without even looking at them. An unknown crazed lunatic has cleared the tower instead of the entire team. With a joyous laughter, he threw himself into the portal and was gone. After everything, that crazy person took all the glory that Lee Kang-hyun should have gotten. They met again at the hunter's exam. Just now he was shining, passing the test. And here he is interrupted by some unknown force. The destroyed maze is no longer suitable for the exam. A fuss was made, and journalists and other observers rushed to find out what had happened. No one was filming Hyun-woo at this moment because he had fallen behind the main group, which was led by Lee Kang-hyun. And who'd pay attention to a shaggy guy in slippers? On the screens in the journalist's studio, Hyun-woo's face appeared. A star was born. Kang Hena gritted his teeth. The second time his well-deserved glory was taken away from him. Hyun-woo just slept while he had the chance. No one had realized yet that he was the cause of all the commotion. In the waiting room, they talked about what happened. Lee Kang-hyun kept his eyes on his dangerous opponent. He hadn't given up hope for a rematch and hoped to bounce back. They were notified over the loudspeakers. A new test should begin in 15 minutes. The noise woke up the peacefully sleeping Hyun-woo and made him open his eyes and stop drooling. For Lee Kang-hyun, it was a ray of hope. He had to show his best. The head of an ugly orc appeared right along the course. The ordeal was called a stream of monsters. Kang Heng took out his purple aura sword and prepared to fight. He rushed at them with his strongest technique without holding himself back. The blade was enveloped in lightning magic, electricity sparking at its tip. A strong spell rained down on the crowd of holographic targets. And it made a furor. Using magic immediately after clearing the tower was rare. The masters of the best guilds had also spotted the birth of a true genius. Lee Kang-hyun was jubilant. It was his moment of glory where he could prove himself. He used a technique with many sword strokes and magic, and killed 78 targets. Not bad for one man. He alone was worth an entire team. That's it. That feeling. He got what he deserved. The best result. All the glory now belongs to him. Observers gave him high marks too. He definitely looked like a leadership candidate. He would have been spotted sooner if it wasn't for the weird guy in the sweatpants. Hyun-woo was frankly bored, but went to take the test. Lee Kang-hyun was wary. What will this abnormal person give out this time, thought he. For journalists, such stories are fodder. They watched closely the contest between the genius and the skilled gambler. Hyun-woo's friends were also watching him closely, how his fighting technique might have changed, what new things he would show. The test room filled with the light of holograms. The timer began counting down the 2 minutes for the test. The holograms of the opponents lit up. Ordinary orcs, nothing special. Hyun-woo stood in the middle. He nonchalantly kept his hands in his pockets. The audience tensely watched without taking their eyes off the screens. The friends of the experienced gambler froze silently in front of the screen. The orcs huffed boredly, though quite naturally, and surrounded him in a tight group while the countdown was still going on. "What a load of crap," sighed the hermit. "I'd rather stay home and sleep and then eat, and then sleep again." The digital targets rushed to attack the indifferent guy. A light push from the ground with his flip-flop-clad foot followed. It left an indented mark on the concrete surface of the arena. Hyunwoo hit the first target, blowing the head off the orc from the light. The journalists could hardly keep up with his speed, and now hoped only for a record from their cameras. The virtual orcs rushed to the attack in droves. But in the same instant, the next orc suffered the same fate, his head exploding. Hyunwoo jumped up and down and blew heads off like the Flash. To an outsider viewer, he simply disappeared, dissolved. All they saw was the monsters' heads exploding and their bodies remaining in place without movement, only a certain black shadow flickering between them. They suspected magic at first, but Kwansung saw everything with his keen eyesight. Hyunwoo moved so fast that even experienced hunters had trouble keeping up with him. In slow motion, they examined how Hyunwoo just ran towards the monster as if he was on a walk in the forest, and struck, effortlessly, without taking his hand out of his pants. And then repeated many times, just jammed the attack on the joystick. He's just so fast it seemed like heads exploding on their own. What did he do in the tower to become so fast? His friends wondered. Sometimes Hyunwoo would do things that others made up about him, and that's how he became an experienced player. He stood proudly amidst the pile of bodies as the tabloid gave his murderous score, 248 murders. "And they call this a test," Child's Play thought Hyunwoo. The video broadcast racked up millions of views and went viral across the web. Thousands of viewers took it apart frame by frame and couldn't believe their eyes. The net did not subside. They were wondering what magic the skilled player had used. Lee Kang-hyun was angry. All the sites were exclusively discussing player. His hands shook with anger. Once again, all his efforts had gone to waste. He squeezed his phone so hard he didn't even realize he'd crushed it. Screwing up like this on the test day in full view of everyone, Lee Kang-hyun didn't want to accept it. The door of the waiting room nearly flew out into the hallway from his blows. Out of anger, he fought back against the concrete wall with his bare fists. From morning till night, he worked like a cursed man, put himself at mortal risk, increased his rank, all for the sake of glory. Is it fair that crazy bastard skilled gambler just took it all and ruined it? Lee Kang-hyun howled. A clipboard with a long list of names was placed in front of Hyunwoo. After the test, he was taken to a private room by a pleasant young woman. She gave him a list of guilds willing to recruit him. Alice. She introduced herself as the association's head of information. Hyunwoo was surprised to take the business card. He was used to these things in 12 years. The manager told him about how the world had changed. There were dungeons, mazes, monsters. Alice was rambling on about guilds and monster rewards, but Hyunwoo was thinking about eating. He listened inattentively, so the manager asked him what he was puzzled about. Hyunwoo was distracted from the list and thoughts of the delicious food he hadn't eaten in 12 years. He was uneasy about such matters being discussed with him personally. It didn't seem like the work of an association, he remarked. The sly fox admitted that she was here on a personal matter. She longed for a face-to-face meeting and laid the Ares Guild contract in front of him. Hyunwoo started to look at the terms of the contract, but Alice turned his gaze to the payment section. Hyunwoo was confused, counting the zeros of the one-time payment to the hunter who signed this contract. Alice smiled contentedly. With that amount of money, success was guaranteed. A $10 billion contract for one stroke of the pen at the end of the page. Alice pronounced the amount again, anticipating a good commission. Hyunwoo can't be fooled like that. It's been too long since he's been home. In 10 years, the country could have been crushed by the economic crisis. Figures, zeros are silent. They don't say anything. Maybe the country was hit by the economic crisis, and now everyone gets this much. Prices did change because of the monsters, but there was no crisis. The market grew. Alice showed him a 10-year comparison of real estate market prices. More than convincing, quadrupling in size in 12 years, Hyunwoo's jaw dropped. Even if the real estate is expensive, he will easily buy it, because he is entitled to $10 billion for the contract, caressed Alice's ears. Moreover, upon completion of the contract, you can conclude it with Nova doubling the payments. She poured honey. 10 times 2, 20, counted Hyunwoo. Of course, the contract implies obligations as well. Part of mining the dungeons and the labyrinth, the girl added. But he'll get a bigger share, smiled the fox. She almost got the cheese. Yet Hyunwoo did not hold back suspicion. The association's information department does not offer contracts. Cat eyes gleamed. She came as a guild recruiter, Alice said. In order to protect the interests of hunters, they are prohibited from signing contracts before they leave the dormitory. The girl rubbed her hands together contentedly, the fish biting, saying in a low voice that the contract could be postponed. But Hyunwoo had made up his mind. He wasn't going to join the guild from the beginning and easily discarded the contract. He didn't want to join the guild, so he refused her offer. Alice staggered and took it as a joke at first, but Hyunwoo stood his ground. This completely confused the manager, and she didn't know how to respond. The self-assured hunter reiterated his desire to remain a loner. The world works on the principle of give and take, he thought when he got back to the hostel. For 10 billion, he'll be asked to do a bunch of unwanted chores that he'll drown in. A mountain of empty packets of chips has piled up under the bed. No such chips in the towers. Hyunwoo wanted a quiet, unhurried life, no need for unnecessary hassle. He'll only do what he wants to do when he wants to do it. Do Hyunwoo's words mean that he doesn't want to be a hunter? Alice asked him. But a hunter can also be a loner, the experienced player replied to the girl. She looked at him doubtfully. Being a loner was for experienced hunters. A novice could do little in the maze without a team. To this, Hyunwoo could only grin. He could definitely do it, the player said afterward. In reality, it's not as simple as he thinks, Alice replied. The manager asked to call the number on the business card if Hyunwoo changed his mind, but the hunter just brushed it off. The player lay dejected. He had wasted a lot of time. Had he learned of the free hunters sooner, he would have gone home to bed. Now he was so angry he couldn't sleep properly. Hyunwoo picked up the list of invitations from the other guilds, a thick stack, but a wasted effort, he thought. 3 names seemed familiar to him, as if from a past life. They met 5 days later at a top Japanese restaurant. As Hyunwoo ate, he couldn't get used to what he saw. He wasn't eating lunch by himself, and he couldn't get used to what he saw in front of him. He looked at the vaguely familiar faces and hardly recognized them. Hyunwoo stared at them oblivious of politeness. He had left his social skills in the tower. Kwon Seo was the same age as Han-woo, but now he looked like a grown-up uncle, though just as cheerful. Crying high school senior Shi Ken became an unflappable, handsome man like a pop idol. Little Seo Yeon, who went to middle school, has become even cuter. Hyunwoo poked his finger like a gimmick. It's Kim Shi-hyun, the hermit said. The one up to level 50 was always crying, Hyunwoo recalled. On the 14th floor, Seo Yeon saw a spirit, Hyunwoo said, but the girl interrupted him. After confirming their identities with shared memories, Hyunwoo returned to the delicious sushi. He had lived without it for 12 years. But what about that incident on the 70th floor, Shiki objected. Had Hyunwoo forgotten how they caught the mermen? Hunter kept whining that he wanted sushi, and one day they came across a tribe of fish people. Taking the knife from Kwon Seo, Hyunwoo cut off the tail of the merman and made a salty slicing from it. Even then, the friends realized that Hyunwoo would become a legend, and they later learned that he was living quite a good life. Hyunwoo got worried and asked again what other legends. He's famous, said Seo Yeon. Even on TV, they showed your weirdness, confirmed her words Shi-hyun. A shadow of anxiety slid across Hyunwoo's face at these thoughts. He came to dread his concept games being shown on TV because he had no idea at all which ones were which. There were a lot of them, silly and ridiculous oddities. A naked sweep game where he pretended to be a crazy exhibitionist. Golem's game, which he implemented from scratch, inflicting terror on all surrounding players. However, the most popular was the part where he killed bosses while dancing, and the part where he jumped from the 1st floor to the 10th floor. Hyunwoo sighed in relief. The world didn't remember all the craziness he had done, and he easily confessed what he had done. He danced like a limp disco dancer, deaf in both ears. Even the monsters were stumped by his crazy antics. His friends listened intently to the story from the tower where he had wandered for so long. Hyunwoo paused at the delicious sushi, weighing his words. It was a flavor he'd missed for so many years that he'd managed to forget it. He'd just tried stuff, he told his friends. He'd had a rough time in the tower, but it was all behind him now. He punched the 10th floor ceiling out of boredom by simply jumping up. Even during the test, it was obvious that Hyunwoo was a monster, and after this story, Kwanseo was more convinced. Gritting his heart, the unwilling hermit remembered everything he had been through. This was how he became stronger. One of his followers had left the tower earlier, Hyunwoo suddenly remembered. For a while he lived between the 50th and 60th floors. There was one guy who had fallen behind the others, wounded, weak, easy prey. Hyunwoo put on a show. At first he was even mistaken for a monster. "Does he want to survive?" the mad hermit asked the wounded lad. He became his mentor and promised to guide him in everything. Then Hyunwoo went crazy and created a martial art and took a student to develop it. He was inspired by the plot of one manhwa, where the main character was imprisoned, and there the truth was revealed to him, which helped him escape. And then Hyunwoo thought he should try the same thing, madness being his middle name. He had his student balance with bowls of water in fighting stances. Gave the student unsupportable weights as training equipment. He rebuked when a student couldn't hit rocks with his bare hands and talked nonsense about chakras like a true martial artist. However, all he really did was catch his disciple when he escaped from the unbearable hardships, for which Hyunwoo repented, then he overreacted. The mad hermit was glad he wore the mask back then. Certainly wouldn't want to meet his apprentice in this life. He came back to reality and asked his friends what had been going on in the world all these long years. They were just talking about this and that like good old friends. Late that night, he returned to the dormitory, tired of sitting around, weaned on socializing. Lying on the bed, he called up the status window to check on him again. Age reset to 0, gone were the limits to the growth of abilities he'd pumped to the max in the tower. The broken curse item was still hanging at the bottom of the screen. A knock on the door interrupted his study. Hyunwoo turned around to the door. An elderly dormitory guard came to him and told him that someone wanted to meet with Hyunwoo. The guard said someone from the Aries Guild wanted to see him. Hyunwoo immediately brushed it off, but the guard said he had already promised to call him. The frightened elderly man asked to understand him and not to refuse. The player decided to deal with it right away, since Aries would keep pestering him anyway. He agreed and went to the first floor of the dormitory. The first floor had a well-furnished reception room. 2 gangsters from the look of it showed up to negotiate with him, one mustachioed, the other bald. Hunter immediately informed them that he wasn't going to join the guild as he had previously. Usati held out his business card to Hyunwoo and introduced himself like an important person. "Had the young hunter thought of everything?" asked the mustachioed geezer afterward. "If Hyunwoo doesn't join their guild, there will be consequences," said the brash gangster. He hinted that a rookie hunter wouldn't be able to develop properly. Someone else in Hyunwoo's shoes would definitely tense up hearing that, but not a crazy player. Kang Ben openly blackmailed Hyunwoo by saying that he wouldn't experience similar hardships if he joined the guild. Hyunwoo quickly realized what the mustachioed man with the gangster's behavior was referring to. "Don't threaten South Central," the Mad Hunter said. The bald boogeyman behind, already ripping at the guy, but Ben's cockroach mustache stopped him. Realizing the guy's final decision, the bandit began to cover himself with the entire Aries Guild. "The mutts that can only intimidate people in a pack," replied Hyunwoo. He already knew everything about their guild. At dinner with friends, they told Hyunwoo that you need a ticket to enter the dungeons. It's like these dangerous places have become an amusement park. The Aries Guild had taken over half of the rookie dungeons in the country, Shiken said. The guild was frittering away money left and right, buying up all the dungeons good for farming, little Seo-yan said. Some newcomers are forced to buy expensive tickets from Aries and join them, giving away most of the profits, his friends told him. Strong heckled, "Ended the languid negotiations, and real dialogue began." Aries people are everywhere, and Hyunwoo should watch his language, the mustachioed man told him smugly. The table flew away like a piece of fluff, the bandit tossing it with one hand. The bald man threw the table into the wall, causing it to shatter. Baldy got an A rank for basic physical skills, but he still didn't reach Saitama. "Do you think you can defeat him?" asked the mustachioed man, to which Henwu only smirked. Hyunwoo sighed at what kind of scum he was dealing with. The assholes were furious at his reaction. The brat had gone ballistic. "Here it comes," said the Mad Hunter, pulling out a slap of doom. "Hitting with his hands is nasty, so he uses a slipper," Hyunwoo informed the gangsters. Baldy gritted his teeth. There wasn't a rookie who had behaved like this in front of him. A rank A hero. "He really wants to die," decided the bald man, and struck first. He squealed like a slaughtered boar and made a scary face, and immediately snatched a slipper of fate at the brazen bread cutter. Hyunwoo didn't hit hard. He didn't want to become a killer and carefully controlled his strength. The slipper slammed hard into his face, knocking the bald man out instantly. With a bullet, he flew into the wall, punching it with a terrible rumble. The cockroach whiskers stirred, but it was too late to think of escape. Baldy had his head securely drilled into the wall like a battering ram. In front of the hapless bandit's eyes, his main argument in any negotiation had just been nullified. "Just let him yell something," said Hyunwoo, holding the remains of the slipper in his hands. Of course Kan Ben saw that very video of the practice test. Who hasn't seen it? It made a lot of noise. Of course he was aware that Hyunwoo was stronger than he looked at first glance, but he was still a small fry for the guild. Even though he's a rookie now and thought he was the strongest. What would happen if he saw real power? The mustachioed man pondered. The power and influence gathered by the Aries Guild will bring a newcomer to his knees. The muscles of an ancient god, a Hercules in the flesh, the bald man overwhelmed with his mere appearance. At least that's how it was supposed to be, the mustachioed bandit pondered. It was meant to be, it always was, but not this time. So when the hell did things go wrong, the mustachioed man wondered. It's impossible to do that without magic, the gangster told himself. And the most horrifying part was that the kid has a second slipper as well. Hyunwoo inexorably approached the bandit like inevitability itself. He crowded the mustachioed man until he unknowingly pressed himself into the wall. A terrifying slipper was approaching. Even half of this slipper is enough to break a person's backbone. The words stuck in his throat, his former importance evaporating without a trace. "What he hates most is being threatened," Hyunwoo said. "Clench your teeth tighter, asshole." The Mad Hunter smirked and shoved a slipper right in the mustachioed blackmailer's face. The starry sky sparkled with a scattering of lights over the night city. Because of the destruction, Henwu stopped by Shinken. The latter reprimanded him for the violent rampages and destruction. "Doesn't know the measure at all, the people of Aries very cruel," reprimanded Shiken, a homeless friend. And what's cruel about them surprised the hunter as he ate the delicious strawberries. "No one touches the Aries Guild because they are terribly vengeful," Shinken warned. Henwu wondered. "Might not let you join another guild," the loyal comrade continued. "Or grabbed quietly in the labyrinth." And that's what Shinken was doing. He might even be killed, the friend worried, because there were no witnesses in the maze. "The world has become more cruel," said Henwu while carelessly eating strawberries. "The crazy hermit is who has become cruel," replied Shiken. Hyunwoo could join his guild or live freely as before, Shuken suggested. "But the idea of freedom will have to be put on hold for now," Hyunwoo remarked while eating a strawberry. "What happened this time?" Shuken asked his homeless friend. "There are things to do," the mad hermit blurted out, and asked if Shinken had heard about Adoran's research center. For years, he was tormented by the question of why he was the only one who couldn't leave the tower. How much doubt and anger accumulated that drove him to madness. Who created the tower? Why did they need to imprison him for a whole 12 years? He wanted to know their secrets and find the creators. Shuken asked why the hunter was interested in Adoran's dungeon. Hyunwoo asked to tell everything he knows about the place. Adoran Research Center, it's in a hard-to-pronounce area, and it's a C-rank dungeon. It's rumored to be great for newbie development. The monsters in it are just as stupid as the tower. "But why do you want to go to that dungeon?" Shinken asked Hyunwoo, but he evasively replied that he had something to do there. Shinken warned his friend that he couldn't get in, much to Henwoo's surprise. "The Aries Guild appropriates all dungeons for themselves, and Adoran is one of them," the friend informed. Hyunwoo was outraged. What right do they have to do this, and where does the government look? "There's no monopoly law," he continued indignantly. But Shin Ken reminded him that governments can't influence the world of hunters. Hunters are out of state. They can even get away with murder if it's completely underground and no one moves. You can't investigate in these areas as it's too dangerous due to the monsters inside. It's all being written off as an accident, a real outrage, Hyunwoo noted. For the state, Ares is a profitable growing company that pays its taxes. They won't meddle in the hunters' business and influence them because of that. But what about getting there secretly? Hyun-woo asked. Shin Ken warned him that the entrance is guarded by Ares and they are not sleeping on guard. Then I'll get in another way, Hen-woo reported back. He was clearly up to something crazy. Always cautious, Shay Ken suspected something wrong. He might just break through the passage, the mad hermit reassured him. Shin Ken warned that this would definitely make him an enemy of the entire guild. For a moment, Hyunwoo hesitated, but he was already their enemy, so it was okay. There was a meeting going on in the Ares Guild discussing the Pedo Guild, which had unexpectedly interfered greatly with Ares' business in China. How long will this delay the guild? The director asked. China's delay of 5 months. Russia and Japan are next in line for development. Listen to the report by director Hook Seong-woo. He doesn't care how long it takes for the plan to work, he told his subordinates. The main thing is to do it faster than the others, Director Sung-woo insisted. It's important not to be the fastest, not to be the slowest, he instructed. The director let them go, satisfied with the report he had gotten. Director Sung-woo finished with one case and immediately started on another. He was given Kim Hyun-woo's skill chart in his hand, which the director had asked about earlier. Based on the video from the learning zone, they created a spreadsheet using analytics technology. They got their hands on various materials, a video of the second orc wave test. A lot of experts started to analyze it and do the math. Physical data, agility, physical strength had the highest level. Magic was absent. This department made a mistake, Ares. The guild leader of the guild hesitated at the results. Superintendent Yu Byung-wook said he also doubted the results in the analysis, but the error could be within 1 rank. So it's true, Hyuk Seong-woo agreed, clutching the report sheets. Is he hired? The young guild leader asked with interest. The superintendent started to justify himself, but the head only waved him away. Unexpectedly, he remarked that it was for the best that they hadn't hired Hyun-woo. The superintendent feigned surprise, but the director knew his subordinate understood. If the guild had hired this hunter, its business would be booming. A newbie will do well in dungeons and will develop. And that could be a threat to Hyuk Seong-woo and the guild director's position already. It's like a poisoned apple, looks appetizing, but you choke on it if you take a bite. If they accept him, the guild will collapse from within, the slippery man pondered. Chief Yu Byung left the principal's room and was immediately called out for breaking news. What's up? He asked his subordinate, who was out of breath and had some bad news. Trouble happened in the Adiron dungeon. Yuben heard the unexpected news. The weather was sunny on Chongbongsan Mountain, and nothing was looking up on this gentle weather day. At the entrance to the checkpoint, a lone girl tried to get a pass to the dungeon but was denied. A red-haired girl with a bow behind her back was making a pitiful face and to get a pass. The proud watchman taunted her by offering a deadly maze for hunting. No skills or money, the guard continued to sneer. Regardless of her earnest pleas, he leaned toward the girl. His eyes flashed with concern, and he immediately revealed his rotten nature, the kind of position that would be hired for. The jerk shamelessly flirted with the girl in a desperate position and leaned right up to her face. He promised to let her inside if the girl gave him her personal number. She was quite taken aback by such offers. They were interrupted by another strange visitor dressed in a tracksuit and barefoot flip-flops. Uncle, there is no toilet. Go to the forest to do business there, disparagingly sent Hen-woo, a pestering idiot. But I don't need to go to the bathroom, I need to go to the dungeon. Hyeon-woo pretended to be a simpleton. This place isn't for playing, raged the dumb monkey. There's a dungeon with monsters. He pointed to the ignorant man in front of him. Hyun-woo was not embarrassed in the slightest. He continued walking. He replied that he had come to do his own thing. Or is the monkey so dumb he hasn't realized it yet? He asked the guard. Not only the guard was stunned, but also the poor girl next to him. He looks like a simpleton, talking nonsense, and has clearly confused all sides of the border. That won't do, said Hyun-woo, and reached for his flip-flop. The astrologers foreshadowed a quick lesson in politeness. The slipper rose upward with significance, as if pointing out people's mistakes and excessive pride. Both guards, the lusty one and his buddy, fell out. What to do with psychos was something they hadn't been taught. "Come closer, banders," Hyunwoo beckoned them by waving his flip-flop and grinning bespectacledly. "He's really sick, you know," the big guy started, but didn't finish. His rant was cut short by an exhalation. Topka ignited a supernova, writing out an extraordinary lesson in good manners. The first student went for the knockout. He flew so fast past the second guard that he didn't even realize anything, only his feet flashed. He looked at the friend in the cloud of dust, and at Hyun-woo the friend, and Hyun-woo, and forgot all the words. Friend lay down to rest, proving once again that hunters are tougher than regular people. An ominous shadow grew behind his back. I wanted to unsubscribe from the courtesy lessons, but it was too late. The guard began to pray involuntarily, and Hyun-woo lamented that he had not calculated his strength. "Hey, you!" He turned to the second guard, who had decided to pretend to be a pole in the hope that it would blow over. "I need your clothes," Hyun-woo informed him, classically. "Do you want to rest too?" asked Hyun-woo, making a scary face worthy of a Balok demon. "Not bad," said Hyun-woo, trying on the new clothes. Clean leather boots, shining. "A very rare shoe worth 5 million, mesmerized to lightness," cried the money of the careless poor man. "I have a conscience after all," said Hyun-woo, looking at the poor watchman's bare feet, and generously gave him his flip-flops of doom, just like that, just off the bartender's shoulder. The guard fell into a solid sludge of dejection as Hyun-woo left. The girl decided to go as well. When did life take a wrong turn? Wondered the hapless watchman, while his friend was peacefully snoozing in the stroller. The Seoul Guild headquarters was in an uproar when Seo-yoon found out that Hyun-woo had just been released to Adorn's lab for no reason. They didn't let him go, but he left. Shin-ken justified himself to his grumpy friend, but she had once been a cute little girl. He expected to have a cup of coffee in peace, but the girl nagged him with her angelic voice. She was worried about the crazy hermit as if he was her boyfriend, Shin-ken noticed, but the girl dismissed his barbs. What could he do when their antisocial hermit friend prefers to act alone? She realized the absurdity of the position of having to look after a savage. Still, the situation is not easy. Now Hyun-woo is feuding with an entire guild, not the last one in the rankings and very violent. But what is, said Shin-ken, clutching his cup of coffee. He himself was not thrilled. In the past, Hyun-woo had always had a calm temperament and acted with poise. He was a rock to lean on. But it wasn't always like that. Sometimes life backed him into a corner. They always looked at his broad back, for he took care of them like a true leader. However, everything was changing. The calm, confident Hyun-woo would disappear as soon as his enemies got in his way. Then the madman in him awakened, and all his bad temper showed itself on his enemies. The friends sighed heavily. In 12 years, Hyun-woo's character had become even tougher, so they understood why he was like this. "But should we worry about someone who vaporizes rocks with his bare hands?" the friends reasoned while Hyun-woo strolled around the lab. Rather worth worrying about his enemies. Hyun-woo walked through the dark, empty corridors completely unconcerned. Friends reassured themselves because there was little they could do. His feet moved easily and freely in these polished to a shine shoes, especially pleasant since he usually used flip-flops. Next time I'll also bring pants, Hyun-woo thought. Sometimes it's very useful to have enemies for your prosperity. If his words are true, Shin-ken continued, remembering his conversation with Hyun-woo yesterday about the Ari's Guild. What do you mean? Seo-eun wondered if he knows something about Hyun-woo's abilities, the girl thought. Shin-ken looked at her conspiratorially, pondering whether or not to tell his perky friend. The news caused the girl to wonder if it was true. She couldn't believe her ears. The lab looked abandoned, darkness all around, dusty suspended everywhere instead of air, and only the grunting of monsters broke the silence. Even the scientist monsters had fangs, albeit small ones. One such wandered the empty corridors in search of prototypes. The Chimera Goblin and Robocop shook a surgical scalpel, carping in an extraterrestrial tongue. Prick who, prick who, prick. The boss of this level wandered alone, scowling fearfully. He lit his way with his headlamp eyes. Several hunters were watching this monster. The Ares Guild let it live because it didn't bring in any money. In the room next to the boss, the three of them were figuring out what to do next. Two guys were waiting to see what the masked girl would decide. The guy in the rugby jacket insisted on catching the boss, yet they paid a bribe to get into this lab. The girl with brown hair doubted if their skills were top-notch, they didn't have to go to such lengths. Helmet Head thought that the strength should be enough. The boss has a weak attack and a good defense. It won't stand up in a long battle. But the girl leader didn't want to take such an unreasonable risk and procrastinated. Too many variables. But then, putting aside those heavy thoughts, he prepared for battle. Our motto is dementia and courage. The trio really wanted to raise their level. They were ready to jump on the lone target like a street gopota, but suddenly they noticed the uninvited guest. Who is it? They wondered. Neither to give nor take a man did not look like a hunter. Sportswear was not in the top of the common equipment. The unexpected guest stood in the shadow of the boss, completely unconcealed. He looked completely open and confident, or just plain crazy. The boss wasn't known for his high intelligence. Looks like he bought his diploma, too. He noticed Hyunwoo and nastily squeaked out something about tests. Maybe an enema to warm up, or 5 liters of blood for tests to pick up, mumbled the zombie RoboCop in his whispery voice. In the distant past, when Hyunwoo was still a child, he ended up in an orphanage. Don't be mean. Don't show your weakness to anyone, was admonished by his older hapless brother. Also, obey your teachers. He let go of empty formalities to a child who was just beginning to understand life. And don't say too much, he continued the meaningless conversation, and the boy looked not at all at that and carefully memorized what he saw. Fate treated him cruelly. His parents had just died in a car accident, and his brother had already handed him over to the orphanage, taking the inheritance into his hands. So the boy learned his most important lesson in life. Never trust anyone, expect no good, ask for mercy, and no pity. A zombie pathologist in iron underpants bent over the pathetic little man to abuse him. Some of his unimaginative, incomprehensible devices were clearly shorting out electricity, apparently to make him move faster. Hyunwoo couldn't stand the creepy harassment of a monster who hadn't even finished his honey, and interrupted his idle chatter. The monster licked his lips carnivorously, but it was unlikely that the dopey head understood the language of words. After all, there was only the name of science in this place. Only to get a light kick from Hyunwoo in his stupid face. The trio of brave hunters sat back with goofy faces, having just had their entire adventure come to an end before it began. Hyunwoo landed softly on the concrete floor of the lab without a single shoe getting hurt. Like a real action hero, he didn't turn around at the explosion of the guts of a stupid monster who was only capable of talking pseudo-scientific nonsense. The hunters slowly drifted to the cold floor from the brutality they saw, glad they weren't in the monster's shoes. "One is ready," muttered Hyunwoo. "The time is next. In the forest village." He tapped the status window. The trio of braves left the hideout and went out to look at the remains of the dreaded boss. But looking closely, the girl was able to recognize the mysterious hunter. It's hard not to recognize the person in the first trends of the network. Now in the light, they could recognize an experienced player. In the deep basement of the Ares Guild, 2 important guild bigwigs met. "And what's the occasion you showed up for?" asked Woo Jongmyung, the former head of the administrative department. It was about a special report. Yu Ben held out a folder of documents to his colleague. "A whole 2 rank A skills," Wu Chong exclaimed. "And this from a newly hatched tower rookie." "That's right," he interjected, looking over Hyunwoo's detailed file. "The estimate couldn't be 100%. Perhaps the target is even stronger." "Strong," frowned the head of the department. "Not just strong, but a real monster," he concluded. "Nothing's going to happen?" he asked, as he swiped the folder at his throat, smirking sinisterly. "We were told to just do some damage," Yu Ben countered. "However, no body, no case. No one will ask if the target stumbles and falls on the knife." "Isn't it great to get rid of this nuisance?" Wu Chong asked. "This guy brazenly broke into Ares' dungeon, beat up the guards, and that's a very unhealthy precedent. That's right, confirmed Yu Ben. Because of Hyunwoo, the reputation of the entire guild might suffer. We are not shameful wolves. Oh, no need to worry, remarked Wu Chong, and smugly grinned. With Hyunwoo's skills, it would be hard to just harm him. He laughed. It's lucky that the guild leader is busy with China.